Mike's wondering, really, is there any time for me? Mike
No,
Dolloff, folks, if you don't know him, he's actually, I think many people know him. Vicky, I should have you do the introduction. You've worked with him more than I have. Where was it you and Mike had worked together? Do I have that right?
Um,
Bail me out, Vicky. Come on.
I don't think so.
I
Mike?
swear you were on with Mike at Krista Early's function. Well, oh well. Moving on. Um, we have worked with Amplix for years, Inflow CX, and Mike's been either forward facing for the most part of several things that we've done together. But I think it's the first time we've had you on Town Hall. Do I have that right, Mike?
that's right. I'm honored to be
Excellent.
on here.
Excellent. And Sean, go ahead and take control over the slides. I'll stop sharing here for a sec. Um, and Mike, from what I remember, you telling me 15, 18 years, something like that in our industry, mostly customer facing roles, that kind of stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So I've been in the contact center space from customer facing, mostly from a technology and consulting and services standpoint, right? So that's the space I've worked in. I remember my first day on the job, David, at a company, dating myself a little bit, just out of college, my first real job, and they hand me this RFP for a contact center who's, hey, we need to invest in technology or contact center. Here's an RFP. And the team that the company I was working for said, all right, Mike, you lead out this RFP. And it wasn't even contact center then, right? It was our call center.
Call
And
center, sure.
and it was quickly, at the time, I don't remember what search engine was around, but I was looking quickly, like, what is this? What am I in? But quickly gravitated towards, wow, this is really cool. This is an interesting blend of technology, people, and processes that really impacts the brand of companies, and kind of hooked from there on out. Rounded myself out with knowing a bunch of other enterprise technology and how it all plays together, which is helpful for the contact center. But really keep gravitating and coming back to this topic and the dark side, I guess, right? Because it's so interesting and keeps me on my toes and is ever evolving.
Well, your kind of byline here of building a smarter, leaner, lower costs while improving outcomes, like that's never been tried, right?
This
So
is the first time anyone's ever thought of that idea, right?
that's
Super
right.
novel, right?
That's exactly right. I see the word IVR as that shout, so that this wasn't necessarily used back then, but it is the overwhelming message that we hear that this is what the technology of the next stage, right? The future. I guess it's here now. Um, and as I mentioned to you ahead of time, a lot of these people are knee deep into running operations, so they're interested in learning and hearing more about success that other people are having, low hanging fruit, that kind of stuff. But let me turn it over to you. And once again, thank you for taking time with the group today. For those in the group, if you're new, and I know there's not too many newbies, but please use the chat at any point. If it's something that needs to be brought to the surface, I'll help Mike identify it. Feel free to raise your hand at any time. And we want you a part of the recorded version, which will be released later post event. So take it away, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to center. And so you guys know the ground rules on this too, right? Jump in with a question, jump into chat, like David said, but don't be shy too and bashful of coming off mute and asking a question or putting stuff in. I'm super grateful that CCNG does this, because I think the community aspect of contact center, what I find constantly, right, is everybody's got their heads down and working so hard on the day to day and running things, and like it's hard to get together. So I'm actually really glad we sometimes get together in person, like those events that you've got coming up, but sometimes just these virtual ones and have a discussion, because there's so much. We're all working in our own little worlds, right, and siloed away from the rest of the world at times. And hopefully we share some insights, ideas that give you something, a little spark of interest, or a connection from here that you can take and act on to improve your operations. So we'll center kind of most of the conversation, depending on how far we go. We'll talk a lot about tech, AI, and automation. Again, like you've never heard that before, but boiling down maybe into a couple areas, talk a lot about stories. And I'm interested in you guys too. Like, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? Have you had any successes or lessons from any of these things? And then we'll talk about the people side as well, because there's a lot of evolution going on. Those are the two kind of buckets we'll fit in. let me advance this. Sorry, there we go. So the big thing, this sort of the cautionary thing I want to start with, right, is with this topic, which again, David, jokingly called out, is not a new topic, right? But I would say there's sometimes this idea that I'm going to focus on one or the other. And it's like, this is the and is important. If we're focusing on costs, we have to look at also, are we improving outcomes? Those can be internal, those can be external facing, but it's this and is a really important word. Because you do this right, I actually think there is the opportunity right now to do this as one of the kind of rare win-wins that happen in the business and operations world, where we can do both of these things simultaneously. And it's really important to do both of those things simultaneously, I think. I think very few organizations can afford to only focus on costs with ignoring what happens to customers or internal staff, things like that. But there's definitely a perfect storm around this. We know this, right? We constantly feel this pressure of customers, depending on what industry and vertical you're in, right? But generally speaking, right, like kind of the expectations for service just year over year continue to increase. And if you say, well, I don't know if that's true, think about yourself and what your tolerance is for bad customer experience. It feels like everyone's gets lower and lower every year. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just a thing that's existing out there. I think the bar is being raised, and people vote with their wallets and stuff like that, right, around this when they can. So certainly there's macroeconomic trends and other things too that are really pushing this conversation around costs. That is a big thing. And we've seen, I don't know how long, but I know that there's certainly, I think, some BPO partners on here as well, but they understand, the labor market has been interesting, dynamic the last few years. And then you have, 3-ish years ago or so, I think the public and sort of general consciousness of what's generative AI, and AI became sort of this topic that is obviously annoying at this point, right? It's incessant, it's everywhere, it's in our face, but it's actually real and it's here. And so what does that mean for contact center? The marketplace is super confusing. It's really noisy. And all of a sudden, I think all of us have had to put on our students' hats again and be like, well, I got to learn some stuff because this is new to me. The good news is it's new to almost everyone, but it's really important that we learn it. So I think the main thing on this is there is this perfect storm. There's this opportunity. And I don't think anyone on this call is doing it, but I think the cautionary tale I would say is number one, don't just focus on the cost piece. That is super important for a lot of businesses, but think about the outcome piece, which sounds obvious, but I see it ignored sometimes. But the other part too is inaction. I've got this quote from JFK on here that I thought was great for this discussion, but there's certainly risks and costs and things like that in what we're going to talk about. And things that are going to be like, oh man, that's out of our comfort zone, or I'm going to have to build a business case, or gosh, can we do that while we maintain the operations? But I would challenge you with the not doing anything, the ostrich in the sand approach, right? Putting our head in the sand and just saying, I'll worry about this another day. That the cost of that kind of inaction, I think, is really significant in our industry right now too. So we have to find the balance of some level of action to move things forward. But inaction really is not a good option. I don't think. I think that will put us in a spot where we'll be outpaced by the market and by the world if we're not paying attention. So,
hey, Mike, can I ask a question of that? Because you got me thinking. I'm staring at Kay, and Kay and I go way back, IVR days, and I think this go around, if you were the kind of organization that said, we're just going to sit back and wait and see how everyone else does it, you might never be able to catch up. And I don't think we've ever seen a technology hit like that. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. And because it's like in the past, the river of change was going at a pace, David, where if you got out of the river or you weren't in the river, you could jump in and catch up, swim. Now the current is going so fast, you can't do that. Things are moving so far. So I think that's true. And I think it's scary, but it's a nice opportunity too. But yeah, we can't afford to wait on the sidelines anymore.
I'm surprised Greg hasn't jumped in on that one. You look like you were rolling your eyes at me. You're on mute.
No, I mean, I think that's, I don't know. I think that you could go either way. I mean, I think there are companies out there that are just by their nature of the industries that they're in, and especially with regard to something like AI, that are that need to take a slower approach to things. But in general, at the highest level, I mean, inaction is not typically a good position to be in. You've got to make a decision one way or another, and sitting on your hands is, I guess, a decision too.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's about the pace is what you're saying, Greg, right? Like the pace of how you do this is going to vary depending on industry and regulations and a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do think this is, it's tough because we've all been, I don't know, burned maybe. I was actually going to preface this whole thing with, I think all of us have some degree of generational trauma around this types of things, right? Because we're like, I've heard this story before. I've seen this. How many times have we seen, what's the buzzword in the past of omni-channel and IVR, right? And self-service in that capacity is like, isn't this the same thing? And I've gone through all these hype cycles too with you guys. And this is different because we are seeing actual, and that's what we're going to get to is stories and examples, because that's what we're seeing actually happen. And again, with a group like this, a wide range of industries and everything, some might be relevant, some might not. But I think the general theme for me is things are happening and these are transforming the operations of these contact centers. How and what specifically you do for your organization is going to vary, but this is happening. This is happening, and it's happening at a rapid pace now.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely got to be engaged with the process, even if it's primarily the learning part of it. You can't have your head in the sand, that's for sure. And maybe you're not making, major decisions about shifts in technology or approaches or methodologies or whatever. But if you're not immersed in the process of getting up to speed on today's, super hyper changing dynamic environment and landscape, then you're basically throwing in the towel. So you may not be putting a stake in the ground and making a move on something, but you definitely have to educate yourself. So from that standpoint, if you want to put that in the category of like, being action oriented, I mean, that's kind of table stakes to, I guess, have any level of success in CX these days.
Yeah, agreed. Well said. I've got a slide at the end if we even get it to it around, we all have to make sure we're being really diligent students right now, like it or not, more so than usual, spending time to learn. And I'm glad for these forums like this are great for it.
Yep.
So on the, again, nothing I think is earth-shatteringly new, but I think when AI first started hitting the contact center, it's where is it hitting? I like to, this is my own lens of how I think of it. I think of it in terms of there's three kind of core areas where AI is having the most impact to sort of bucket these things, because it becomes, AI is just sort of such a broad term. The customer facing side, right? So how is AI impacting the customer facing side? Which ultimately, indirectly, almost all of it, AI is impacting, but indirectly. Directly, we're going to talk about that, the self-service, the virtual agents. I think for me, boiling it down to some of these buckets helps me sort of get more action oriented around like, where do I start? Where do I go? What are use cases and things like that? You've got kind of the agent side or agent and supervisor. I would say the kind of EX, employee experience side of things, right? We'll talk about what those categories are, what we're seeing for outcomes there, and then talk about the business side and some of the lessons learned around that. So those are kind of the broad categories. I'm going to start really briefly on the agent side. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. This is, I think, why, Greg, to a little bit of your point earlier, or I guess sort of validating for me some of the, this is real, this is not a hype cycle, is the concept of chatbots, or bots, I should say, in general, is not new. We've had this for years. And those were sort of your natural language understanding bots. And so you had, we've had FAQ bots in this concept for a long time. And so this was sort of a, iteration or different angle to self-service from sort of IVR. And great for really structured responses, precise answers were needed. You could get very predictable because you could build intents and then have sort of your library of how you wanted to handle these intents. Labor intensive in the standpoint of you had to build these things over and over and sort of manage them, right? But those have been around and continue to be around. Generative AI enters the mix and suddenly have this idea of, wow, we can make these very human and natural. We don't have to sort of build out every single element of how we want to respond to intent. We can use the concept of LLMs, large language model, to now help facilitate some of that communication and sort of back and forth of a virtual agent or a bot to an end customer. Comes with other pros and cons, right? We've all seen the sort of hallucinations and the concept of this, of like, wow, this can be wide ranging. So you got to have to figure out guardrails around this. But you can handle some more kind of wide ranging things without having to build up every single aspect of intent to get there. And then you've got now like the big buzzword in the AI space for virtual agents last year or so has been agentic, right? This idea of you're introducing the ability for virtual agents to problem solve and reason so they can handle more complex tasks. They can work through workflows. So there's sort of like this evolution already within just this one section of AI over the last couple of years that's pretty dramatic. And what's interesting and what I want to ask you guys is, I would love to hear if you guys where are you at in this journey? Are you using multiple of these types of self-service capabilities? Are you just focused on one? I'd love to hear any input. Anybody having successes in this category, doing anything from a voice or digital bot perspective?
Feel free to also use the chat if you're
I'll just
in the
say
middle
not
of doing
doing
multiple
enough.
things.
I'll just say not doing enough.
Not doing enough.
Finding skilled resources for training and building tends to be a roadblock that I've seen come up. It's new skill sets, right?
Yep.
And then finding the budget to either hire them or finding that person or people internally that have that natural drive to learn that and execute it.
That's interesting, Daniel. I was at a conference a couple months ago in Europe on conversational AI, and it was very pervasive in Europe. They feel to me like they're a little further along on some of the conversational AI journey in some aspects. And almost every organization I talked to talked about that they've created this new AI trainer role, right? And they've got multiple of these, which is what you're talking about, right? So the person care and feeding and expanding sort of the functionality of the bot or bots. And I was like, how are you finding these people? Like, who are these people? And for a lot of the organization I talked to, it was the career journey so they were QA people. Maybe they were great agents who knew a lot of what these customer interactions are like, or supervisors. And this was like a very new and exciting career change for them, right? And so they were embracing AI. They knew a lot of the business operations, the customer use cases, the knowledge resources and things like that. And so they've become sort of this AI training layer. So sort of cultivating within their own organization, that career path was kind of their success story. I thought that was really interesting. I'm sure you've explored that, but it sounds like it's been successful for many organizations I talked to over there, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful though to have resources if someone does choose that career path to be able to provide them some basic training, right? Yeah. And then ongoing support besides just, hey, you'll figure it out type of thing. So that I think that there's an opportunity somewhere in the space to develop that.
That's a great point. And
I think I've been using a virtual assistant for 4.5 years, a conversational voice, and we started out small and we expanded to much more complex cases. But what I find, I know the things that it does really well, but I don't know all the things that it's not doing well. and that's the thing that we use these QA analytics to analyze our agents, to using AI to be able to understand what are my agents doing, summarize their call, summarize their performance. But not a lot of people are QAing the bots, right? And so why can't you use those same tools? And that's where I find a lot of the AI vendors out there are selling the good things that it does, but they don't want to expose the things that they don't do really well. And I think that's going to be a key is who's QAing the bots to make sure that they're actually doing what they need to do and make them even more efficient, right? Because we all know, and my favorite phrase is that everybody wants AI, but nobody wants BS, right? So and there's a lot of that out there. You just but we don't know where it is, and they don't want to necessarily expose that. If they find that stuff out and they were QA it, they would all be much more effective.
I think you're touching on a huge gap in there, right? Which is they want to cite the tech, right? And there's good, but what's not there. I think I can't remember who I talked to, but I envision exactly where things are going, Brian, is what you described, which is QA in that sort of, you've got interactions, human or agent, you've got analysis and data of those, you've got QA and then feedback to improve those in that circle going. And it doesn't matter if that's a human or a virtual agent, the life cycle of improving that is the same concept, right? And I think you're right. Today, we're thinking of that for humans. We're not thinking of that with virtual agents in the same capacity yet. We need to get there. I agree.
The one thing
Yeah, that's one example of that too is like just from a technical standpoint is like in QA, when we do human evaluated calls and AI evaluated calls, we'll always take the AI and evaluate the human scored calls. So essentially what you get is a hybrid system where you can calibrate one to the other.
Yeah.
I mean, humans have to QA the AI. And back in the old days of machine learning, we call that supervised learning. Essentially, it's just,
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter whether you're verifying, like a lot of times let's say, for example, you take a standard operating procedure document and it's 300 pages long. You want to create a quiz from section 1.8 of 10 questions. Okay, so generative AI can spit that out for you in a couple minutes, but you better have an expert to go and review it because you have to be sure that you don't have outdated information in your SOP, that something didn't get confused or hallucinated with the AI and spit it out. So
Yep.
you have to have that human oversight, and you have to have systems in place and methodologies that you're putting together and processes when you're formulating these plans in the first place, right? So that you are accounting for that, because it's not going to account for itself. You can guarantee you're going to have a lot of problems if you don't structure your systems that way.
There's so many good examples in there, Greg. Love it. I think there's someone else who's going to chime in as well.
Okay.
yeah, thanks. I was gonna say I am with a company that just signed for conversational AI.
Yep.
And the thing that frightens me the most is the complete trust of the vendor that they're the ones that can do it. And that to truly understand what you were talking about inside talent, the vendor can't implement or design or develop your solution. They know their technology. They've probably done this before, but they do not know your customer. They do not know the experience that you want to generate. They do not know. The thing that scares me the most is that how many people are truly looking, like everybody just said, that we're going to input something and we're going to develop something, but how are we going to know that it is causing great pain for our customers down the road? And so one of the things I got asked immediately was, what do you think we ought to measure? And it was, holy, holy, everything.
Mhm.
We need to be looking at every aspect of this, and to develop that talent from within. That's the thing that frightens me most about how fast we're moving in the technology world in the call center, is there is no educational path. And like everybody said, we need that educational path to understand truly how to do this. If you look at the call center experience, we've got agents who became team leaders because they were good agents. Well, now we're having people come to be conversational AI experts because they were good managers or were good supervisors. And we need to get smarter than that in the call center industry and really help and understand, how do we develop an educational system that we don't just plop somebody in there, because we're going to cause them to fail at some point.
Mhm.
Not only are they going to fail, the system is going to fail.
Yep. Yeah.
I see a lot. So most all these AI vendors, and we're at CCW in Vegas, and you see all these. Everybody's does. We're the number one provider, right? Well, they're all really good at technology and understanding technology, but I don't see a lot of them are involving operators in their development and understand that how is me as an operator, how am I going to use this tool to be effective? They just think that they've got great technology that can do everything, but they don't understand how it's being used. And I think that's a gap.
100% agree. Brian, on your experience of you're going down this path of virtual agent for several years now. So there's this question you've got still, the feedback loop, and where is it not doing great? Where have you seen it on the other side? Have you seen any great successes there? What are some of the things, if you're comfortable sharing any sort of successes so far?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, we 4.5 years ago when we went live with this, I've shared this, I think, in a town hall that I did in the past, but I had 40,000 very simple PBX type calls that we just needed some help with. And day one, it handled 80% of those calls. And I was abandoning 50% of my reservation calls. And so that dropped my abandonment rate. So great success there. And it's continued to do success there. We expanded it to make full reservations, and it's doing well. I mean, it does 100 reservations a day. And we think, well, that's great. Look how great it's doing. But then when I started looking in there, there's 200 that it failed at. So why did it fail at those 200? And that's where I'm starting to understand is we know what it's doing well, but we don't know. There's a lot of more opportunities that we don't QA to understand why is it failing and to fix those points along the way, whether they're their fault or my fault, to give access to them. So, but yeah, it's great. I mean, I still think you got to have humans. People still want to speak to a human. I don't care how good it is. They've all had bad experiences with it, so they want to speak to a human. But my feeling is automate everything you can, but always give people an option to be able to speak to the live person if they want to. So let's give them options.
How have you done that without? Because this is where that trauma comes in. Because we've all been on the calls where we're like agent, operator, 0, whatever, right, to get out. And sometimes that's people's default motion, Ryan, because even if it is like they have a very basic thing that self-service is great for, have you found a good way where you can still let them trust and get some experience self-serving, or do you just immediately pass them to an agent without any questions asked?
No, a lot of them initially they just think, oh, I don't want to speak to a robot. I want to speak to a person. They say, agent. They say, great. In order to get you to the right place, can you tell me a little bit more about what you want, what you're trying to do? So I make sure. And then they say, well, I just need to check on a reservation. Well, I can help you with that reservation. I can help you check on that. And do you have a confirmation? Boom. Yeah, here's your confirmation. It's all there. So then they realize, oh, that was really easy. I didn't have to wait on hold. I could just take care of it. So we're training people along the way, but still, if they say a second time they want to speak to somebody, I just give them to them, because don't make it hard to get to an agent if they want.
Love it. 100%. I think what you said there's gold. I hope everybody captured it, right? Which is, sure, I can get you to a human, no problem. Can you let me know so I can get you to the right person? And then sometimes people are just at that point comfortable and on the self-service journey. And if not, right, you just immediately can get them and you've got some context of how to route that interaction. So I think that's brilliant. One thing I'd say too is that we're seeing more of this idea. I think people with bots are like, I'm just going to jump in some capacity. And the reality is NLU versus generative versus agentic have different strengths and weaknesses. And so a bot's not a bot. It's like bots are different depending on what type of bot on the technology side and what you're trying to accomplish with it. And this is, I think, part of our general, as an operator, learning curve of just getting familiar enough with some of these technology things to understand, so we can be asking some of these questions, right, when we're engaging with IT or other teams about them. Otherwise, you'll learn the hard way of, we put in a bot, but it was an agentic bot, but we really needed something simpler. It could have been an NLU bot. And so we have a lot more sort of vagueness than we want to have in some of these responses, or containment's not what we thought it'd be because we're not solving these things. So there's a mismatch. So I see a lot more of sort of blending of these things as you get more sophisticated on your journey of having different types of bots for different use cases within the organization. And that's totally fine. And I think I agree with everyone on this, that there's this whole, I don't know what the answer is on this internal knowledge building around this. I think it points to a bigger fundamental shift, which is, in the past, all of technology was 100% lived in IT's realm, and you guys were the end customers to consume that. More and more, this business kind of blurs the lines between operating the business day to day and what IT can provide and support. And so I don't know the answer. It is a big sort of existential, I think, thing that's being solved. I see more the shift in the industry overall, though, where more of the power of sort of day-to-day and optimization of the technology lives more in the operations team in the business versus in the IT team. That's not a blanket statement, but that's where there seems to be more of a trend towards. Some orgs, it's the exact opposite. Some it's 100% that, but internally you have to figure that out too. So there's some conversations, collaboration with IT too, as you introduce some of these tools. I think that was Catherine, you're talking about yours. Who's going to be responsible for the feedback loop and tuning and caring and feeding of this technology? It's a big question. And there's not a great, you don't send people into a university course today to do that, to become conversational AI experts, for example, right? So tricky
Can't you
spot.
just ask Chat GPT? I mean, doesn't that just
It's a great starting point
somebody
for a
had
lot
to
of
say
it.
it? We were all thinking it. Come on.
Well, I was trying to pull up Chat GPT to figure out how to answer Catherine's question on that, because I think it's a big question. It's still coming up with it, Catherine. I won't bore. I think this topic, we know about this topic. We're seeing successes with it. I think, Brian, your example is great, right? To understand. We're seeing this pretty consistently. I think the big point is start simple, right? Where I see failure is often trying to bite off too much here, right? Like going full boat into this versus trying to pick off some use cases that are specific, that you can have really concrete, hard ROI around. Start there, have success. You start too big, you lose internal momentum. You're paying too much for stuff you don't know if it's going to work or not, but starting small and biting something off, and then, which is difficult because I think all of us like to have our checklist that we're done with this. Like with these journeys, it's like you're done with this little step. Now you got the next one and the next one and the next one. My anxiety doesn't love that, but that's the way we have to do these successfully, right? Is little bits like that. Let's transition into talking about agent assist, that sort of bucket, because I think the agent and supervisor experience with technology can be, dramatically impacted, right? For the positive with some of the technology out there. This to me is an area where there's a lot of very low-hanging fruit, low effort, high impact things, because we're taking existing processes and automating some of them, making them more streamlined and more connected. They're still very much human in the loop in these too. So if people are more risk averse, the other side is these are kind of internal facing, right? So this is, you can control all of this internally within your team. It's not something that's sitting in front of a client. But sort of curious to see who's done things with sort of this overall agent or supervisor assist bucket, right? Of, sort of real-time coaching for agents, compliance, alerting, coaching prompts, or the sort of post side of this, right? Which is like interaction summary. Anyone have any experiences firsthand doing any of these technologies, using any of them today and having stories from them?
We've used it, Mike, on a few different clients for a few different channels. We've used it Copilot for email, for live chat. What I really like about it is it allows new agents to onboard way faster, and they kind of
Yep.
have, like in the days of old, you would be in nesting. Now you put them connected with that Copilot. They have a one-to-one relationship, and 90+% of what is asked upon them, the Copilot, as long as your content that you're feeding the Copilot is super strong, it's going to be able to provide a pretty confident, at least draft of an answer that agent can go with. And then right now we're in process of launching a voice tool for outbound sales that will listen to the conversation and then provide basically the rebuttal for the agent to say if someone pushes back on why they don't need this. Well, did you know this, and this? And that, I mean, it's super powerful.
That's amazing.
So we're in process of testing it. It looks really good. There's no delay. So we'll see. But I'm a big fan of Copilot. because of the ability to just be so much more efficient.
100% agree. I mean, it's like you described it perfectly, which is like it's like having that experienced coach right there, except you can scale that, right? You can't pull somebody off the phones and do that across all your new hires. What's been so a couple questions off of that, Kevin? What's been any sort of how's that been received by the new agents, right? Your new hires, your new groups.
So I would say the new agents, like people coming in, love it. There was initially some pushback, from the more tenured agents saying that they didn't like how it formulated the responses, how it kind of basically put together the sentence structure and all of that. But it continues to get better the more we use it, and there's less and less of that. But the new agents, I mean, they love it because it's right there. They don't have to raise their hand. They don't have to go in Slack even, or there's none of that. So and they can use it as much as they need. And we're actually, telling them to use it and to basically as a crutch. So it allows them to get out into production way faster, allows us to shorten the training cycle down from weeks to almost hours in some cases. So it's pretty massive. But again, it all depends on so now the new role we've seen come out of this is like, SOWs and not SOWs, sorry,
SOPs.
SOPs,
Yeah.
yes. SOPs have always been like, okay, when we have time, we need to update the SOP. Now it's like that has to be a priority.
Yeah.
SOP has to be green at all times. It has to be super clean because that's basically the brains of that copilot.
Have you carved out or repurposed roles or anything like that, or is it sort of crowdsourced? Who's owning that? Just curious.
Yeah, so our training people they now have less time in training, more time in content writing.
Yep.
So we've kind of, the percentage that they were spending in training has now, and percentage that they were spending in content is now training, and the percentage that they were spending in training is now content. So it's like 80% of their time is now making sure that the content is constantly up to speed, because especially the new agents, they're gonna assume that it's right, and they should. That's what we want them to do.
Yep.
How does
Yeah.
governance work, gentlemen? Kevin, specifically with the technologies that you're implementing?
Governance, like release governance, like project release.
Like, is the message clear for marketing? Has legal looked at it?
Well, good question, Vicky. But these are mostly who I'm dealing with are mostly like I'd say in the startup phase still.
Okay.
They don't. That's part of the reason I like working with them. They don't worry about or they don't go through governance. They probably should, but a lot of times we're getting it straight from product and then writing it, but it doesn't go through all those iterations of legal governance, especially. It's normally from product straight to us.
And this goes back to one of Mike's first points about just like the speed with which you are able to move forward with these things. It's a lot of function of the size of the company, what kind of regulations you have to conform to, what type of industry you are, your sort of risk disposition, all of these things. And obviously, a startup company, for a while, they can get away with certain things that a large, let's say, utility company could never get away with. So, this is just another example of like how that comes into play. Like some companies can spend 3 or 4 years figuring it all out, while some companies can just plow straight forward without the same types of risk, involved. So,
Yep. Agreed. One area that I feel
Vicky,
this is good.
sorry about that, Mike. Just I have some experience with governance in the healthcare space for AI, and I can tell you that it was a cross-functional team, and it included legal, it included customer success, operations, and also sales or marketing, depending the org. We had a sales group in there, and then we have a sponsor from the C-suite that was championing the overall governance group. But it was truly a governance group. We set up our own governance program, policy, tracking, logging mechanism. And over time, there started to be some standards that we could generate out of those. So less had to go up to governance, but it was being governed, if that makes sense. And so I could share that experience with you.
Thanks so much, Daniel. I think that this is what we're seeing as well. A lot of the customer service leaders think of just plug and play, and they're, to Kay's point, they're basically being sold that you just, put Copilot out there or ChatGPT and it just pulls everything in and gives the answer without any kind of oversight or human interaction. And it really can put the company at risk if you don't have some type of QA process or governance or whatever the company wants to do to really make sure that the knowledge that's getting to the agents or that the chatbot's given the customer is accurate.
Yep.
I think they're being sold, and I think that's why there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace.
And we are QAing all the Copilot responses just the same as we are a flat agent response. So I guess my counter to that, Vicky, would be like, I mean, there's risk from that an agent could say something incorrectly too at any point. So
or that they're saying something off of an outdated SOP, like you were saying, Kevin, right? They're all saying at scale today wrong,
Well, they could have done that. They could have been doing that before AI came along. What we've seen is like what the whole process of bringing generative AI into the mix is that it's surfacing all these issues with these outdated documents in the first place.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
we hooked it up to the website FAQs and the product guy, that was the one layer of governance we did. He's like, where did you get this? I'm like, I got it off of your website. He's like, oh my
last
God.
update 4.5 years ago or long.
Yeah, you really got to have a process, right, Kevin? And that sounds like what you've got. But what my point was that a lot of customer service leaders are being sold that you just plug and play, and that's a recipe for disaster. So I think there's a balancing act, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a great call out, Vicky. Love it. One area that I think, again, simplifies, you still need to QA and there's some tuning to set up. But one of the areas I've seen that's been really impactful has just been the kind of interaction summary, right? Like you have your after call work, you're going to wrap up and you're going to have people, and again, not all use cases like this, but you got this after call work time and summarization. We're all used to this from meetings and from ChatGPT and everything. Like, hey, give me this document, give me a 3-sentence response. So applying that same sort of technology to your interactions at scale we've had customers, I have this example here of the financial legal services, but they were allocating on average 4 to 5 minutes of after call work across their different queues, and turned this on, did some tuning, and now they're 30 seconds, right? So the cost savings of them is dramatic. The data quality is higher. They have standard language, so if they have different centers in different parts of the globe where English is a second language in some parts, all of this becomes standardized. So that to me is an area I've seen be pretty easy for people to adopt. That I think the Copilot piece, there's more layers, right? Just overall, they're both great, but I think this whole category is a really tremendous opportunity.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I got a quick question for this group, if you don't mind. I had a strange situation happen to me last week. The virtual assistant, literally, when I said I need to talk to somebody, because it was one of those weird ones where I didn't fit into any of the questions. The virtual assistant literally said to me, if I transfer you to a human being, they're going to give you the exact same information that I just gave you. So here's my question. Was that programmed in? Did someone actually make that decision to say that? Or was that the AI taking over and saying something like that? I mean, where did that come from?
It was an AI ad lib. It was an ad lib. I love it.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, to this group, because it shocked me.
That to me is bad configuration. To me, that feels like somebody who's set it up where they're trying to really contain and block versus facilitate that sort of escalation by design. And that's a program thing versus the agent going wrong. That's what to me feels like more like that's their okay, you can talk to someone, but they're going to tell you the same thing. Feels much more like they've programmed that as kind of a direction to take it. But
Bad idea if it was on
it's,
it was intentional. It's
I
a very, very
agree.
bad idea.
It is a very bad idea.
I would call it a defect.
Yeah, that's a wild one. I've
Vicky,
not heard that, Vicky.
it's called don't trigger the AI you're interfacing with.
I'd like to know how you got to that point, Vicky.
How many
unusual.
curse words were used before you gave you that
Exactly.
answer?
No joke. In order to get the phone number for customer care, I spent 15 minutes and every word I was typing was probably profanity. And they finally said, "Oh, you want to talk to a human." And when I got a human, finally, after going through, they tell me that, they're going to give me the same answer, the virtual assistant. After about 10 minutes of screaming into the phone, I get a human being offshore, very thick accent, who told me the exact same thing. And when I pushed her, it was a 25-second fix. 25 seconds to fix my problem. And
Well,
it took me almost an hour.
it seems like that response is the old don't offer a 0 out on an IVR.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is a big
we're just
company.
doing the
This
same
was a
thing.
big company.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a roadblocks versus pathways, right? So some of them put a roadblock. They put a roadblock because they don't want to take the call, or some of them build pathways to help people resolve their issues. So that's the difference between good and bad.
Thank you.
So we're in the home stretch here, and so we've touched on some of this, but I think the other sort of business facing side, no surprise here, but and I think there's a theme, and Vicky, I'm glad you highlight it. I think part of the confusion and noise is everything's being sold as if it's gonna, cook your breakfast, walk your dog, do your laundry, everything. And the reality is it might streamline some of those things, but you got to put effort into them still. Or you might be the one actually doing those activities, but you've got some automation augmentation, right? So conversation intelligence, I think, is one of the big areas we've touched on this, right? So that's surfacing up insights. This is the QA, right? And being able to automate that. There's a lot of power here. And again, all these things sort of play together. If you don't have good data on why people are reaching out and where you want to focus self-service, then you got to start with this, right? Like, let's get data, let's understand what's going on. The other side of that is, okay, we've put this stuff in. How are people happy or sad? We've contained some calls, but are we now frustrating our population? They're contained because they're giving up and going to your competitor. That's not a great outcome. So being able to measure and understand that. I think the positive side, you guys have touched on a lot of this. Once you have data on what's going on, you're going to surface up a whole lot of knowledge or process gaps. I remember running a proof of concept, proof of value for some customer a couple of years ago with conversation intelligence, where just ingested a sample of some of their interactions to just sort of key in on what are some of the topics. They said, hey, this is a good example, sample size of things going on and a good sort of cue to look at. And their number one driver calls in that sample was about a broken process between, this is e-commerce, a broken process in the shipping process that they had actually no idea about. And they found that their agents were dispositioning things a certain way, and it wasn't flagging this huge thing as a problem. People, they're just, take it. This is dispositioning as it. So it uncovered for them this whole large, not related to contact center at all, workflow problem that they could solve. I think those are some of the side benefits of this. But if you don't have insights, this is a great area to find. I think this is the cautionary tale here is, can it do everything for you out of the gate? Is it going to require? It's still going to require stuff, right? I think, who was it? Kevin, was it you that was talking about, the kind of, or maybe Greg, it was you talking about sort of that you might have some AI doing some of the checkboxing of your quality forms, but are you still going to have somebody look at that and make sure that's right and do some level of human intervention there. But I think there is a ton of potential. We had a customer that shifted to doing a lot more auto QA. They got it set up, and they were able to take a very large QA team and sort of like what Kevin, I think it was you that talked about sort of shifting your training, onboarding folks from more content, less training, more content. Sort of same thing with the QA team, right? Shifted from a lot of doing the forms to then what do we do about this? And let's work cross-functionally to update knowledge, do training and coaching, work with supervisors on things, work with marketing on things that are creating problems downstream in the contact center. So there's potential here, but again, it's not the sort of panacea. You just set it up. And I always use the Ron Popeil analogy. Remember Ron Popeil? The set it and forget it, you know? Yeah, that the TV pitch guy. I think all this stuff's presented as that, and it's like that's not the case. You don't just set it and forget it. There's care and feeding. But anyone having any experiences, sort of that conversation intelligence based successes or lessons learned to share? All right, I'm gonna put us onto our last slide here just to talk at the end. We'll skip a couple things. So there, I think this is a journey. I've shared, I'm impatient. I like to be like at a destination, right? Check the thing off the list. This is a very long journey of what we need to do to evolve the people, processes, and technology right now. There are victories. There's great views if this is a journey, but there's also going to be hills to climb, and it's going to be painful, and that's okay. Just know that mindset. Just go into that with that mindset. This is a lot. I think if you go into this thinking, I'm gonna be at this great end state by 2026, the end of 2026, like you might be discouraged because there's going to be just a lot of challenge. There's a lot of evolution and maturity within the company that has to come along with it. You might have to help develop talent, develop new processes, new steering committees, and all that stuff. But like, that's why I just kind of take a little bit of a longer view on some of this. I don't want you to be discouraged. But there are lots of wins you can score and keep to sustain you through it. I think the other thing, and I was talking with David a little bit at the beginning of like, we have to be great learners now. If we took kind of like our foot off the gas, it's been a while for me since I've formally been a student, right? And I'm a student now, like it or not, and it's part of my job. And we need to be students. We need to embrace that. We need to spend time with that. We need to encourage our, next level of leadership to do the same thing. We need to support that. We need to help them in that. We need to give them resources in that. We're in that phase where we have to. There's a ton of new things happening where we've got to do it. If we don't, we will be passed by, right? That's just the harsh reality of it. So let's be students in addition to our day jobs of leaders and operators, right?
I would think that's such a
David.
great point, Mike. I just want to say that there's one of your big red flags. If you're being told, don't worry about it, you don't need to be a student. We've already figured it all out for you. I mean, there's your big red flag, right? To case.
Totally. Yeah. Be wary of that. That might be some snake oil they're trying to sell you, right? So, and I think that I'm glad you guys are on this. You're obviously engaged in the community and learning. Keep doing it. Keep encouraging the next level of your leadership to do it. There's a lot we got to figure out together. We talked on the win-win. We've talked on the AI. I think, create a strategy, create a plan, and just start small with things. But you can score wins. Don't be afraid of it, but be thoughtful about it. And so you guys know all these things. I love learning from you. I've got some great insights now from some of you who chimed in. I love the stories you've shared. You're obviously many of you are well on this journey, and I'm learning from you. But there's an opportunity here to create immense value for the organization, for your customers, and also be mindful of cost and be able to sort of hit that magic arrow of flatlining or containing costs while you continue to grow and expand your business, not just growing them at the same pace. So that's all I had. David, we're at the top too. So any parting thoughts of wisdom or ideas or insights from everyone that you want to leave, by all means.
Comments? We haven't heard from John.
No, I think it's been good conversation. I think the overlying thing I would say is this is not easy. But I would also say it's kind of like when you're building a house, you've got to focus a lot on what you're doing, the lot and the foundation before you start to build on top of that. So the more we can focus on the reality that there's a lot of work that gets done before you even start to layer the technologies that will pay off and provide dividends like the oversight committees, like the data integrity and things like that. So I think the prep work is almost more important than the actual overlay of whatever technology we choose.
Mm-hmm. I think you see people run immediately to the tech, right? As like it's going to solve all this stuff, and you're putting a coat of paint on a house that's sitting on the sand or something like that.
Looking for a solution in search of a problem.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that.
I think Maryland Marilyn said it best in the chat. You've given us a lot to think about, and we thank you for driving the conversation in that direction. I mean, everybody contributed today, and that tells me that we're kind of all on the same page. We know we don't know enough, and we're trying to learn. Brian's contributions in terms of the successes they have. It's just nice to have a conversation that is focused on, we need to know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to go known knowns, known unknowns, and then unknown unknowns, something like that. I can't remember how he did it, but Mike, you did a great job of bringing us all into this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And bonus round, anyone know Sean's dog's name?
We need to see the dog,
Question?
Sean.
I was waiting for Dan Bongino. I was just waiting for it.
Her name is Monkey because she climbs a lot. We just got her. She's a rescue, and she's just getting settled in here. Come here, Monkey. Say hi. Come here. There's a girl.
Thanks.
All right.
That's
Nice.
awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, everybody. We will have the recording, as Jillian said, available shortly. But we thank you all for your contributions today. And Mike, great job.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Mike.
you.
Mike. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.